So welcome to the first. This is the first episode.
It is.
It is the first episode. Yeah. So of our amazing project called the Elisha project. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And today we are going to look at a case study and pretty much dissect it. And we will, by dissecting it, we'll look at hopefully what went wrong. How did this lady in the story get to where she was in the current position? So that's the first thing. The second thing is we will then talk about what she had to do to find a solution. What's the problem and then what's the solution? Okay. So where should we start?
I think first it's important to define the fact that we as Berean Workshop are taking this project to be able to facilitate or help men, specifically middle-aged men who are struggling with their finances and are looking to change their financial situations. And we're taking this case study, which is from 2 Kings chapter 4. And hopefully we can, like you said, dissect it and be able to find a path that leads us from a debt situation to a wealth creation system.
Okay. Yeah. So why don't you read the story, and then we'll have a little bit of context to what the story is, and then we can go through.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm reading from the ESV, 2 Kings chapter 4, 1-7. Now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves." And Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me what you have in your house." And she said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons and pour into all these vessels. And when one is full, set it aside." So she went with him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is not another." Then the oil stopped flowing. Then she came and told the man of God. And he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on the rest."
Good. You go first and I'll go next. How would you summarize what happened in this story?
Okay. So I'll take a bit of a backstory approach because it's alleged this widow, this is from Jewish history, was the wife of a man called Obadiah, who stems from 1 Kings chapter 18. And this guy was actually propping up, he was hiding 100 prophets in 2 caves at his own expense. And he passed on. So obviously this woman incurred this debt. So she's in this situation where she's got nothing left but that cruse of oil and only her 2 sons. Okay. And this is where the problem starts.
That's where the problem starts. That's what. Now I want us to bring this to today. What's the parallel of this story to the people, to our audience, men in the middle age, leading up to retirement, refinement, whatever we call it? How does this relate to the audience that we're speaking to?
I think the first thing stems from verse 1 itself. It says, "The woman cried out to Elisha." So you see the weight of indebtedness straight away. It's your mental health. I think we've discussed this before where we've said probably this occurred in the morning. So she's probably had sleepless nights. She's thinking about, where do I go from here? How do I get out of this situation? Yeah. And for most people around the middle age bracket, we're kind of losing that energy. And we're looking to secure our finances for the rest of our lives, as it were. And this applies to most of us, I believe.
So as we approach middle age, the pressure for financial stability increases if we don't have a system in place.
And that's what we really need to explore. It's the next, whatever it is, 15, 20 years of the rest of our lives.
Okay. Now, what will stop the average middle-aged person from actually embarking on this journey?
Most importantly, we've looked at the fact that courage. Just the desire to ask the questions.
Yeah.
I'm in this situation. How do I get out? That's the first thing we need to consider. Where you stand, can you ask the questions? Is that a hindrance to start with in itself? You know, admitting you have a problem and looking for a solution, a solution to the problem. So that is a big hurdle.
So we need courage. We need a lot of courage to accept where we are. What's the reality? And I think what you're also saying is that sometimes we all, everyone is included, might have like a level of not having a reality check of exactly where we are.
Yeah.
You know, time is of the essence. Like you said, 20 years. When we were younger, 20 years seemed like an eternity.
No, I thought I'd live forever. Thought I'll be 20 for a long time.
But today, 20 years doesn't seem like a long time at all. So we need that courage to say, okay, listen, there's an urgency here. 20 years is going to be here any time from now. Am I financially stable? Am I financially solid? Do I have the confidence to say that my latter years will be I'll be exactly where I want to be. So there's a courage there to face the reality. Okay.
Yeah, the scriptures remind us, it says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. So we want to be in a position where we have sufficient wealth that propagates itself. So yeah, the focus of 2 Kings chapter 4 is a woman who's moved from debt to having more than enough, which is what we're trying to analyze those principles.
Okay. So in your own opinion then, what is standing in the way of people actually having courage? Because we've met a lot of people who would say, and maybe I'm speaking for that category of people, that how do you drum up courage to face this reality and do something about it?
It's important for us to realize that maybe sometimes it's the stigma behind admitting the fact that you have got yourself in a mess. So you're in a jam. How did you get yourself in a jam, and how do you have the courage to be able to talk to someone about that, or even look for a solution without, the problem is keeping up with the Joneses, trying to fit in. And we have to look at this on a very honest, truthful level and say, this is where I am and this is what I need to do to get out of this.
There's the stigma, there's the feeling of hopelessness, there's a feeling of where do I start? And when we were talking about this earlier on as well, so apart from the courage, we also discussed the importance of curiosity. I believe that if you go back to the story of this woman, the wife of this prophet, and she knew the situation. Her sons were, the creditors were coming after her sons. And that in itself is one of the biggest challenges that, maybe our worst nightmare, you could say. But she found the courage to face that situation, but she also did something that I want us to talk about a little bit, right? So, when you and I talked about this one time, we said, when the threat appeared, when the creditors came over and threatened to take her sons, a lot of things would have crossed her mind. A lot of options would cross her mind. So the first one could be, you know what? Perhaps they should take these boys.
Let me just lose the boys.
The boys can go, they can work out the debt, and I'll just, sit here and wait for them and hope and pray and, or find a different solution.
Very valid option.
Very valid option. Very valid option. And I think if we bring it back to today, there are people out there who would probably say, you know what, my financial situation, I don't see a way out. I'm just going to settle for the status quo. But what we are saying is, don't settle for the status quo. So apart from the courage that we've been talking about, there is this word curiosity that's really, really important. And I believe this woman was curious enough to say, or even for the curiosity, she probably said, look, I'm not going to settle. No one's taking my boys. So she made a decision that no one was going to take her boys. So then the question that needs to be answered then is, what are the alternatives? This is where curiosity must come in.
This is where you weigh your options. You're looking at what's available out there.
Absolutely. So in a roundabout way, I think the point I'm trying to make is, even if you feel that there is no hope, please have that curiosity. Curiosity of what the better position could look like. Absolutely. What else do you want to say about curiosity? What else?
It's analyzing your current situation and then thinking of what the options are. So you weigh where you are and see what the better situation is, the best situation is for you. and then kind of curiously look at what the options are. So, but that is something that only you can possess. You know, you want to be curious enough to look at how do I get myself out of this rut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with Berea Workshop, one of the things that we're doing is we are working with this model. It's the 7C model to effective change management, personal change management. So that's why we're talking about, you know, we're using the C's of courage to face the reality and the curiosity to dream about what better looks like. And I think it's really important that we spend a little bit of time talking about how do we begin to paint a vision of a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that, you know, you can maybe bring to the conversation about how do you build a beautiful, powerful, compelling vision to move you forward after you've had the courage to face your reality?
It's important for us to be able to understand what wealth does for us. We know from scripture, especially in the book of Ecclesiastes, it tells us that money is a defense.
Yeah.
It tells you that money, Proverbs tells you that money gives you influence. It says, your gift shall make room for you. That means it gives you access. So what money is, like you always say, is an enabler. It allows you to fulfill your purpose more effectively. So your better will always be a situation where you have enough to be able to pursue what you want to do. You do not have to be sitting and worrying about your bills, who's going to care for your bills, who's going to pay for your kids, school, who's going to, etc., etc. So that's what money does for you. And that is always a better situation where you're pursuing your goal instead of pursuing the vehicle to your goal, which is money.
Absolutely. I think while we're doing that, it's so important that we continue to write the vision. You know, seek the vision of a better financial position, write it down, even if it doesn't look very good at the start. It will evolve. The more we spend time looking at our vision, and of course, this is why it's now important for us to embed our faith. What are the promises of our Creator around being financially stable? What are they?
First one is, I was looking at Deuteronomy earlier on, Deuteronomy 8 in particular. Deuteronomy is like Moses talking to the children of Israel before he passes on. He's giving his advice. And in 8:18, he tells them this. It says, the Lord is the one who gives you wealth, or gives you, he enables you to produce, to create wealth so that you can establish the covenant. So that wealth, he gives us principles, techniques, laws that allow us to increase wealth so that we can establish the purpose.
So wealth creation is God's idea.
Wealth creation is entirely God's idea. God is not opposed to wealth.
Wealth creation is God's idea.
Nothing immoral about being rich. I mean, the Bible clearly states when it talks about the patriarchs, look at Jacob, Abraham, all of them were rich. No apologies. So you are rich because you want to fulfill your purpose, not because that's the end itself, but it's just the means to the end.
So we've established the fact that don't lose hope about your situation. If you look around you, you're not happy, just like how this woman cried. She cried in despair, right? Because again, you mentioned money is a defense. I just wanted to come back to that point very quickly because I listened to a video not too long ago, and this person said, this is why money is so important, especially at the stage of middle age, like us. You need to eat better. To eat better nutrition, it's going to cost you more.
Amen.
Am I right or am I wrong?
Definitely. I want to be able to carry my body a certain way so that I can effectively do what I'm supposed to do. If you don't take care of your body to fail on you, you won't fulfill your purpose.
Absolutely. If I go to the supermarket, at the moment I go to the supermarket and this, I get all this like this. I like to make grills and grill my. But the thing is, the cheaper like meat products that I see, they are. You could tell the difference
the
between
nutrition
the
of that.
You know what I mean?
So
you know, when we think about all the different levels, you need more money. You need money to stay healthy. You need money to have peace of mind. Because the older we get, you know, the more we need to be guarding our peace, guarding our hearts. No, we don't want blood pressure, high blood pressure, hypertension, and all that kind of stuff. Money is a big contributor to high blood pressure. So wealth is God's idea.
Oh, definitely.
You know, and so at Berea Workshop, that's one of the things that we're very, very passionate about. We want people to dispel all the wrong teachings about wealth. Now, we know that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that's the love of money is completely different from wealth.
It's when you promote money over God.
Yes.
You put him as the sole pursuit of your life. Money. When you put money as the sole pursuit of your life, then obviously that becomes a God. And God should remain God.
Fantastic. So how can we at Berea Workshop, you go first and then I'll chime in as well. How at Berea Workshop can we assist people to look at these two elements we've talked about? Having courage and then being curious about what better looks like, especially for those who believe, you understand, in the promises that the Bible tells us about wealth, and that wealth is God's idea.
Let me think this through. I was looking at the phone. I already did that. So what does better look like?
What is better? I mean, how can we help people to to begin that journey? Say, for example, they say, Tolu Mululi, you know, I like what you're saying, it sounds nice, but what is it? We had a friend, didn't we? I want to be practical.
Yeah.
I want to be practical. What are the practical steps of actually being, one, having the courage, and then two, being curious to create? Without that vision, you're going nowhere.
No. I mean, when we look at the account in chapter 4, is we're looking at practical steps, but not only the steps, we're looking at principles that allowed this woman to be able to move from A to B. So the first account is her approaching a man of God called Elisha. And most important thing is we know the background of Elisha. Why does she go to Elisha? Elisha used to be a farmer. He understands seed time and harvest, sowing and reaping. So she's talking to a professional, getting advice, and this man is able to convey the steps that she needs to influence. So it's to influence her position from debt to increase. So what we at Berean Workshop are looking to analyze those particular principles that Elisha discusses with this woman and applies, and she moves. I mean, the Bible clearly states that the increase is of the Lord. So there's a miracle in the story, but the steps to the miracle. And we're trying to emphasize the steps to that miracle. Increase, regardless of whether you're an atheist or a Christian, is of God. But it's because you're working on certain principles. And those are things that we want to explore. Maybe be able to point you to the right direction where you can get help if we can give it, or at least make it available for you to explore.
Okay, very good. So you said it very, very well there. We have a responsibility to take certain steps. And when we take those steps, then for those of us who are believers, we know God's going to do his bit. If you're not a believer, know that these principles are universal. We encourage you to explore knowing who the Creator is and understand, or even explore what the offer of salvation is. But if you're still not sure, know this: the principles are universal, right? So that brings us to the third C. So we've talked about courage to face your reality. We've talked about what's the
Curiosity.
You have to be curious of what better looks like. Now we're talking about we must get clarity, and you get clarity by speaking to the right people. Just like this woman spoke to Elisha, because Elisha had the background. We have the background as well, don't we? We do have the background. So, and we wouldn't even be here if we didn't feel the call to do this.
To be able
so
to help,
we have some specialism and some expertise. Luli has talked about practicalities and some principles. We bring the two together. We'll create sessions, workbooks, mastermind groups, little courses that will help you look at those 3 C's and begin to work your way, take your own steps, and then allow the Creator to take his own steps.
Yeah. I like the point of clarity. Clarity is where Elisha is asking relevant questions.
Absolutely.
Making her think, making her detail her issues.
And I like that point, because when she went to Elisha, she said, Elisha, this is my problem. And the first question Elisha asks is, what do you want me to do? Which means, what's the vision? You cannot even start a process and get help from the experts if you don't have a vision. What do you want me to do for you?
If you don't know what you want, you have to define what you want.
What if she said, I don't know? What would have happened?
Oh my goodness. Elisha, so then Elisha would say, then I don't know how to help you.
I don't know how to help you. What do you want me to do? You have to come with something. Tell me, do you want a contribution? Which, of course, maybe at the time there wasn't a lot, sort of like in the treasury for contribution. So that's the bottom line is, we need that vision before we now begin the journey of exploring, finding how we can finding help to make the practical steps happen.
And the interesting thing is that Elisha himself flips the entire situation from where she's come to him, possibly for help, but Elisha changes the focus from him to her. You know, so are you able to detail what the issue is? That's what he's asking her, basically. He says he's looking for that clarity from her and not necessarily from her. He's there as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a mentor, someone who's there to help her or guide her through this situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about a principle. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think it's important. We've talked about these 3 C's of courage, curiosity, and clarity. Newton's law of motion. Now, the reason why we felt that it's important to bring, because we're talking principles here, Newton's first law of motion. Since we're talking about we're going from A to B, we need to really understand some principles here. Newton's law of motion says that an object will remain at rest or uniform, sort of like motion, unless a force is exerted upon it. What does that mean in this financial term? If you have a financial situation, like this woman had a financial situation, you continue to have the financial situation. If you're not happy with the result you're getting in your financial life, it will remain the same. It will remain the same until an external force is applied to it. A change agent is applied to it. Talk a little bit more.
Straight away I'm reminded of that quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result. So you have to be able to change what you're doing to be able to get a different result. So if you read the entire story, there's a part where the woman is asked the question, what do you have at home? She says, I've got nothing but this little cruise of oil. So the way I understand it, she's probably been selling off bits of what she has to pay off this debt, and that's not working. So she has to do something different. Then she comes to Elisha. She's curious. There must be another way out of here.
My sons are going nowhere. That decision has been made. We've perhaps sold everything that we can. Okay, we still have this situation. What's the cure? Curious. There must be another way out. So this is also a message of hope and encouragement that there's always, if you're curious enough, you will find a way. You'll find a way. Okay, so if we wrap this up, because we'll do the next episode and then we'll talk about the next phase. So we can break this down nicely. So if you're listening and you're curious about this journey, the first step is to have that courage to face it and say, yes, I need a change. Be curious about what good looks like and even start to, because we can't tell you what good looks like. We can't tell you what better, I beg your pardon. We can't tell you what better looks like. This is where the vision comes in. And then finally, we will then work with you on clarity. Okay, so we will have details available of how you can get some of the workbooks or some of the exercises that you can do, and then we can support you as well in that process.
Our position is that of Elisha. We're there to give you and guide you with principles and make sure that you're able to take this journey to the end. Paul, I think in Philippians, talks about pressing through, and pressing always talks about pressure. So whenever you change or you want to change, there's always going to be some resistance, and it's all about steadfastness, being enduring, going through the entire process.
So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and look out for the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye for now.